We're both ravens. Just do what comes naturally.
How about those Game Awards, huh?
Whose belief that I would amount to something good would never waver, even though it looked like things like next work is not touch who I am forever.
Not surprised at most of the results, but finding out that Bayonetta 3 got Best Action Game over Dad of Sad 2 genuinely shocked me. Also, FromSoft finally confirmed that they were developing a new Armored Core. Pretty funny to see thumbnails describe it as Mech Souls, but the announcement finally got me off my keister to play some Armored Core games, so I could have an idea of what to expect for next year. I don't know if anyone else has felt like this, but I think I'm a frustrated mecha enthusiast. I never got into the main Gundam storyline, or fully committed to any other mecha anime other than Eva. I think I like super robots over real robots, but I can also appreciate the designs of mass-produced armor. I've played games that were mecha adjacent, games that feature mecha but didn't make them the primary focus of gameplay. And the only mecha game I've covered for this channel is Metal Wolf Chaos, but that gameplay feels more arcadey and less simulation-y. I've been wanting to play an Armored Core long before the announcement for 6, but the control scheme's been my biggest hurdle. I tried AC2 on original hardware years ago, and just couldn't get it. A friend showed me his custom bindings, but it still didn't do it for me. It's been one of those things that I've put on the back burner for other projects, but making these videos provides me an opportunity to step out of my comfort zone and do something new. So, I'm getting back on that horse. The horse is mechanical, by the way. Instead of trying to play every Armored Core in release order, I opted to play only 2 titles, Armored Core 3 and Ninebreaker. Checking on each game's Wikipedia article, AC3's plot serves as a soft reboot for the first game on the PS1, so I didn't have to worry about continuity when jumping in. Also, it's the last AC game to not use analog sticks for movement and camera controls, and I wanted to clear that hurdle for past me. Ninebreaker is one of the later AC games that implemented stick movement, but it's the only Armored Core on the PS2 that doesn't have a main campaign. Instead, it's completely focused on the arena, where you fight other mechs in one-on-one combat. I wanted to get a sampling of the PS2 Armored Cores. AC3 would provide me with a general understanding of the series' gameplay and narrative. Ninebreaker would show how stick movement affects the experience of piloting a mech versus digital inputs. Let's start with AC3. Armored Core 3 is a 2002 mecha simulation game developed by From Software. You play as one of the numerous mercenary mecha pilots that offer their skills up to the handful of mega corporations that control the setting. Those pilots for hire are called Ravens. Something bad happened to the world, and now everyone lives underground. A computer AI called the Controller manages every aspect of living, including the global cortex, the network that Ravens use to conduct business with prospective employers. The campaign follows your path as you move up the ranks as a Raven. Missions comprise of proxy wars and skirmishes waged by the 3 major corpos in the game: Crest, Mirage, and Kisaragi. Each of them wants to control the Controller, but fail to realize that it's not called the Controller for nothing. An unofficial 4th faction emerges as a resistance called Union that wants to break free of the Controller's hold. But none of that matters to you. As long as you get paid, you'll jump when they say jump. I love how depersonalized this game is when it comes to presentation. You know how modern trends in games have the player character take up a substantial portion of the screen's real estate to establish a psychological connection with the player so that they place themselves in the character's shoes? You never see yourself in this game. The conceit for the main menu is that you're interfacing with the Global Cortex browser to hunt for jobs, order parts for your mech, read mail from employers and fellow Ravens for news, or sign up for a fight at the arena. The only way you can express yourself in this game is through your mech. You can choose its parts and its color scheme, along with any emblems to display on its frame. Make sure to give your mech a name, or else it'll just be known as AC1. So, how does the mech control? Stiff, but we can do some workarounds to make the experience a bit smoother. Unfortunately, you do have to play the first sortie with the default control scheme, so we can at least explain how the game wants you to move. You move your mech with the D-pad. Press left and right to turn your mech in their respective directions. Hold L1 and R1 to strafe left and right. Hold L2 to look up, and R2 to look down. The face buttons control the mech's functions. Press triangle to scroll through your weapons, and square to fire your active weapon. You're either firing weapons carried by your right hand, or your back unit. Press circle to use your left hand weapon. Press X to use your boosters. If you hold a direction while boosting, you'll propel your mech in that direction. If you're not holding a direction, you'll boost straight up. The trick to movement in this game is knowing how to maneuver your mech with your boosters to platform and dodge missile fire while managing your energy meter. Even though you can't use the sticks for movement, you can still press them in for some extra functions. L3 toggles your extensions, which are add-ons to your mech that enable extra booster movement or enemy lock-on disruption. R3 is usually reserved for overboost, which is a sustained boost that spends all of your energy. If I grew up with this game, I could probably internalize this control scheme. But we don't have to live like this. Move the strafe buttons to left and right on the D-pad, and make the face buttons serve as camera controls. This leaves the shoulder buttons free for mech functions. I based my controls off a diagram that my friend gave me when I tried to get into Armored Core 2 a couple years ago. L2 is used to boost, and R2 is used to fire the active weapon. L1 switches weapons, and R1 is used to fire the left-hand weapon, which is a laser blade by default. Now that you've got a decent control scheme, and know how the mech moves, you can take on jobs for the corpos and fight in the arena. Armored Core 3's missions take place in a handful of zones. Each zone is on a different layer, and they won't be immediately available to you from the start. In the early game, you pick and choose which jobs you want to take, and they'll tell you how much the payout is, and whether you get it after beating the mission, or if there's an initial payment just for taking on the job. Every mission gives you a briefing on what the employer expects of you. Since you're working for faceless corporations that are people only in the legal sense, most of the jobs you take are going to involve busting union strikes, stopping corporate espionage, performing corporate espionage, and helping private militaries troubleshoot their experimental weaponry by participating in a turkey shoot. Guess what your role is? Some missions will give you additional funds to hire another mech to serve as your consort. You get a selection of available pilots to hire, but something I noticed that bugged me was that you only ever have enough money to hire one pilot, despite the fact that you always have 2 open slots. Not sure if the second slot implies 2-player co-op. When you engage in combat, you gotta manage a handful of systems in your head. Most weapons operate on target locking, so as long as you keep your eyes on a mech, the computer will track its movement. But keep in mind, if you can lock onto a target, there's a good chance they've already locked onto you. It's important to keep moving around the battlefield to avoid enemy fire, while also keeping your sights on the enemy so you can wear them down. You also have to keep an eye on your mech's health displayed at the top left of the screen, your weapon's ammo count on the far right of the screen, and your energy meter on the far left of the screen. You might think that all this meter management could cause you to go wall-eyed, but the game makes sure to have its HUD elements be big enough to be legible when you're dealing with 100 different things happening on screen. Eventually, it ends up feeling like you're driving a car while glancing at your dashboard during the brief moments of respite you have while hiding behind cover or dodging missile fire. Although the game sticks to a very dry and distant presentation for most of the campaign, the missions can have twists that catch you off guard the first time you play them. What starts out as a standard smash and grab can end with a surprise boss encounter that you weren't prepared to engage when you were prepping your gear. One mission ended up becoming an ambush where my consort betrayed me and I had to fight 2 mechs at the same time. Luckily, the game was nice enough to allow me to hire another consort, so I had someone to run interference against a surprise enemy while I focused on the traitor. I didn't try out every weapon type, so I can't give you an expert opinion on how to kit out your mech, but I can say that the machine gun with 1,000 rounds is extremely handy and worth keeping well into the endgame. An important distinction to understand early on is that missiles and rockets are not the same. Missiles require lock-on to work, so you need to get a good FCS unit that lets you paint targets fast and farther than point-blank range. Rockets don't require lock-on, so you can fire them faster and at ranges you normally wouldn't use with missiles, but they can't chase fast-moving targets, so you'll have to get good at leading your shots. Or just get real close and just start blasting. I didn't use any laser guns because I think they draw from your energy meter instead of using their own ammo, and I'd rather save that resource for movement. Using laser swords is good though, because it saves you ammo, but only if you can catch a target dead on with their hitboxes. A good piece of advice is, don't fall in love with a particular build. If you're having trouble with the specific mission's challenges, figure out where your brick wall is and what's holding you back. Is an enemy moving faster than you can track it? Do you need to swap out your parts so you can move faster? Do it. Are they moving faster than your missiles can follow? Swap out your pods with ammo reserves for your machine gun and maintain your DPS. Something nice about buying and selling parts in Armored Core 3 is that you can always sell whatever parts you have for the same price as what you bought them for. In a way, it's kind of like the Proud Souls in DMC4, where you can trade out skills to get the ones you need for a specific instance, instead of committing to whichever skills you bought in previous shopping sessions. Legs are an important part because they affect your mobility as well as your carrying capacity. If your legs aren't sturdy enough, you won't be able to carry all the weapons you want on your arms and back. Also, legs determine how you can navigate uncertain terrain. I had a hell of a time defending the resources during this mission because I would sink to the ground if I fell into the pink water. but if I had hover legs, I could take out these drones without the risk of instant failure. Don't feel too bad if you fail some missions. The game will usually give you a few tries before closing the mission off for the rest of the campaign, and you can always pick up other jobs to make up for the losses. However, there are plot-critical missions that will result in game overs if you fail them. Early on, the game understands that you either don't have the resources or understand the mechanics well enough to face these threats, so you don't have to win the fight, but last long enough for an exit to appear. But over time, the game narrows the number of missions available per chapter, and introduces more plot-critical, zero-tolerance missions. I get that the game needs to raise the stakes, but I thought that it got less interesting because of those restrictions. Truth be told, I actually gave up on Armored Core 3 after a certain boss encounter. The mission starts with you going through a gauntlet of enemy fire to find 3 keys to open a door that houses data on the controller. You need to shut it down. When you exit the data room, this guy pops up.
We're both ravens. Just do what comes naturally.
This mech has a double-barrel shotgun that melts your armor at point-blank range, rockets that it starts spamming once it hits a certain damage threshold, and moves like a spider monkey all over the place. It's really good at closing in, popping off, and running away to fire rockets. I couldn't get past it. That's when I decided to play Ninebreaker instead. 2 things that I appreciated as soon as I booted the game. 1. You can change your control bindings before you even have to get in the mech. And 2. Stick movement finally frees up the rest of the controller. Now you can use the face buttons for extra functions, like using inside weapons, or to eject any spent weaponry. Movement in Ninebreaker is exactly what I wanted for AC3. What's also nice is that, because the game is completely focused on arena combat, you don't have to manage funds for parts and can freely switch out weapons and limbs from the start. The downside? It's completely focused on arena combat. As fun as it is to go head to head with various builds, I miss the objectives that missions provided, as well as level design that isn't just focused on big wide open fields. I could have ended the video here, but it didn't feel right to just give up on AC3 like that. I needed to get back on that mechanical horse. The good thing about retro gaming in the current year is that we're not stuck with the tools and resources we had back when we were kids. We got the internet, YouTube, and emulators with save states. So after a bit more trial and error, and a build that emphasized mobility and rockets that I could spam at close range, I broke through the brick wall, and ran into a few more. First, I ended up in the Gwendolyn hallway. There's your Dark Souls connection. This is one of those dirty missions because just as you break through the defenses, you gotta fight a souped up security droid that's just as bad as a spider monkey mech, all the while making sure that you don't destroy the central pillar in the room, or it's an insta-fail. Make a light build, keep moving, and stick to the target. Then I faced this Shadow the Colossus ass boss. Again, YouTube guides helped me figure out how to fight it. This is where I learned that you can buy more than one instance of the same back weapon, and effectively have double the ammo count. The final mission is a compilation of all the annoying things that make up the late game. Labyrinthian level design made to waste your time with dead ends and fake exits, security drones to chip away at your health and bait you into spending ammo, a dual boss encounter, and a generator protected by an energy shield perched way up in a vertical chamber. Get your bulkiest yet still mobile build, your best DPS weapon, and some ammo reserves for your back units, and a video guide on YouTube to show you where the exits are for the level. Something I wasn't expecting was that the game actually separates this mission into 2 separate parts, because once you reach the first exit, your health and ammo are fully restocked. Here's a trick to save some health. Step on the elevator so it moves down, but stand on the wall so that you won't get ambushed by security drones. There's no fall damage in the game, so you can let the elevator go all the way down, drop to the floor, and exit the exit with minimal damage. This dual boss encounter was surprisingly easy. Get the first boss's attention, and stick to the lower half of the room. If the second boss jumps in, you can still win, but you'll have an extra threat to keep an eye on. They both go down fast with machine gun fire. Now that the way is clear, you can destroy the controller. Follow the overlay on your screen that displays target, and whack that section of the column with your laser sword. Make sure that you have enough energy when you reach that section, because you won't be able to swing the sword otherwise. After a few hits, the section will reveal its weak point and you can finish it off with one more hit. I thought this was supposed to disrupt the shield and we'd have to move up, but nope, that's it. We beat the game. After the credits scroll, you can save and load the game up again. Once you have a cleared save loaded, you can revisit every mission in the campaign, even the ones that you failed. There's an extra objective to beat a specific fighter in the arena, but I couldn't find them, so I assumed that I need to clear the rest of the arena to face that pilot. But I think I got my fill of Armored Core for now. I got an idea of what the setting will look like, how missions play out, and how mechs operate. I can safely assume that Souls influences will find their way into Armored Core 6, just like AC influences found their way into Souls games. And I don't feel so overwhelmed seeing AMD graphics card designations when I'm shopping for parts. If your computer can handle emulation, and you're willing to climb a steep learning curve, play Armored Core 3. Use this diagram to rebind your controls, and don't shy away from YouTube guides or save states to make the experience a lot smoother.